yeah, I, you know, Jesuits have been a big thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
And, people have such an odd view of them, but I always tell them, well, if you study Yaqui history, you'll see that
Mm.
Jesuits saved the Yaquis from the Spaniards. And, the Yaqui people, they're still syncretistic Catholics.
Sure.
Was inspired by Jesuits. And then,
Mm.
a couple of years later, Loyola gave me a PhD.
Right,
So,
right, 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 right.
I thought this is great. And
Yeah.
what, they had me do the commencement speech, and they gave me you know, the wonderful diploma. And Father Mike, Chicago Loyola president, was up there, and I said, Father Mike, I want to thank you for honoring me for betraying all of my spiritual calling.
Oh no.
And he came over and he punched me on the arm, which was
Mm-hmm.
so cute. So, yeah, I love Jesuits. And you brought up, the coffee philosopher in Broken Angels. That's Dave Ungerleider,
Okay.
Jesuit priest in Tijuana, who was behind putting together Tijuana's first public lending library.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Met him through the Landon Foundation.
Yeah, I mean, actually, my grandfather lost his father in the 1918 flu. Italian immigrants, and with not a coin to their name, and the Jesuits, gave him his first baseball glove. He ended up being a pitcher in the minor league. So the Jesuits have their checkered history in some ways too. But I have so much respect. They've been great for many people, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they have been. So, you talked about, so I guess kind of a glass half full, glass half empty. You talk about sometimes, the idea that the Tijuana poets kind of looking at you like, este güey va a hablar en español, et cetera, et cetera. How about the positive side of things? Like you talk about, you were quoted as saying, I'm more interested in bridges than borders, something to that effect.
Yeah, because, again, that all stems from what I was telling you, that it's a job of service. And I think all of us who came out of that milieu very much had the sense that, it was our responsibility to keep our hand back
Mm-hmm.
for someone, behind us who was trying to climb up too, and help them get up on it.
Sure.
Because it doesn't take away from me if you have success.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of us feel that way. We feel like we're in a horse race or something, but,
Okay.
and I'm only human. When Degollado over here starts getting, touted as a genius, I was like, hey, what about me?
Exactly, right?
No, but
Yeah.
that it's it's all of a piece, it's all of the peculiarities of your being. We all have our things. And I think one of the things in the Latino literary world, Latinx literary world, is I think a whole bunch of us ended up having a whole bunch of success for a little while. And I think there were a lot of divas
Mm.
spawned.
Mm-hmm.
And I never wanted that. I didn't want to do that. It makes me feel a whole lot better if I'm, if I'm trying to help someone realize the blessing I got.
Sure.
And sure, it's not like manna falling out of heaven. It's work, and there's suffering involved, and there's all it's but I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. And I know that no other writer or poet I know would either.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can do something to help that person realize even a bit of their dream, how can you not want to do that?
Mm-hmm. I love to talk about the Devil's Highway,
Yeah.
which is, you are the interprete in that way. You're able to, you talked about like with Terry Gross and things like that, that with the Border Patrol can be, demonized.
Ooh, boy.
Right. You talk about there's kind of a simple narrative, and you were able to put in the nuance and the subtleties. It's an incredible story. Correct me if I'm wrong. There were 14 migrants from Mexico who died south of the Yuma area, called the Yuma 14.
Yep.
They were basically abandoned by their coyote, their smuggler.
Yeah.
Where did you get the inspiration maybe is not the word, but the, where did you decide to do that?
No inspiration,
Right,
man.
right.
No inspiration. I was having the typical semi-obscure author literary life, right? So I was, I'd had a couple of books put out by New York presses, and now I was having books put out by small presses and university presses and so forth. And I had moved to Chicago, and I was at the time rueing my decision because I'd been Mr. Nature Boy up till that point, and suddenly I thought, oh my God, what have I done? And I had been all those previous years working on Hummingbird's Daughter, so I'd been with medicine people and shamans out in the desert seeing ghosts, and all of a sudden I was in Chicago, and I was at the University of Illinois, where I still am.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in my office, and I got an email from Little Brown, and it was this editor, Jeff Chandler. And he basically, introduced himself, and he said, I'm wondering if you'd be interested in spending the rest of your literary life in the Little Brown family.
Oh, okay.
And I thought, what? This doesn't happen. And I called my wife and I said, Cindy, this weird thing happened. And she said, don't be stupid, call him back. So I called him back, and I tried to compose myself. I was like, so Jeff, what's going on, man? And so he said, have you heard of the death in Mexico of the migrants? I said, yeah. And he said, would you like to write that book? And, there was honestly a moment when I thought, I can't do it. I said, I don't think so. And he said, why not? And I said, well, first of all, I have 3 border books already. And everything else I write about is pretty much about the border. I never signed on to be border boy. I think I've done my work. And I said, and honestly, the responsibility for telling the story of those deaths just seems like too much for me. I don't know if I can do it. And I didn't tell him, and I'm scared of the freaking Border Patrol, man. Are you nuts? So he was quiet for a moment. He said, well, okay. I basically said, I can respect your decision. He said, but I just want to ask you one question, man. And I said, go ahead, Jeff. And he said, do you trust anyone else to write this book?
Ooh.
Right? I said, hell no. He said, well, then. Right? And he said, I'll make you a deal. This would be the ultimate Urrea book. Be as weird as you want. Go crazy. He said, but what I want you to do is to design the Trojan horse and bring it in like a true crime epic, but containing every secret and every secret only you can find out, because people in America have no idea what's going on the border.
Yes.
Not really. How can you? That's pretty amazing. So they died in May of 2001. Our conversation was in August of 2001. And then 9/11 happened.
Right.
So I thought, so much for that project. But they regrouped, and off I went. And part of the struggle was that nobody in the Border Patrol would talk to me. Nobody. And they played games with me, and they ran me around, and they did all kinds of really weird stuff. And I had given up on that. I thought, I don't know how to write this. And they were probably wisely suspicious. Their most controversial case, they were being sued, they were being investigated. They were also in a lot of trouble for other things that were going on. And here comes this Tijuana. All they know is some guy with a Mexican name that writes books extolling the wonders of Mexican poor people and migrants. They're like, sure, we want him in here. And my wife, a reporter, by the way, did the reporter thing as I was lying in my bedroom listening to Leonard Cohen and 9 Inch Nails, acting like a poet. Oh, it's all over. She called Border Patrol stations, and she got an agent in Yuma, and the guy said, sure, send him down.
Wow.
So off I went. And that's how that all happened. Because my family has a well-known name in the ambassadorial
Oh, right.
world of Mexico. My cousin Enrique is an ambassador. His son Alan was working, I think, in basically PR and communications in the Phoenix,
Consulate or
the consulate.
Mhm.
Yeah. The consul in Tucson knew my family. Anyway, they were the first to open up to me.
Okay.
And I went to see the consul, and he let me into the death archives, which no outsiders got to see. So I saw all of the autopsy pictures, the autopsy reports. I was given the baggies with the things that they had in their pockets. I smelled their rot. Um, and then the Border Patrol, I went to Yuma, and they didn't like me there. And they said, we didn't do shit, man. It wasn't us. It was Welton Station. So I was led out there because the agent didn't want me in his vehicle. So I followed him. And in Welton Station, it was terrifying. I'd never been inside that world, and the cages and all the agents. And I thought they were bad guys that were going to hurt me. They were acting that way. They were giving me all kinds of guff. And I realize now, if you've ever read a Joseph Wambaugh book, like the New Centurions or something,
Okay.
you'd understand. You can't just walk into a police station in some embattled world and say,
Sure.
hey guys, can I write a book about your secrets? They're like, who are you? So they were giving me a really rough razzing just to see what I was made of. And the supervisory agent came out of the back of the station, and he was watching all this. And I've said this before in talks, but again, Grace, there was this moment where we just looked at each other, and I don't know what, there was this connection. Kenny Smith. And he said, what is this guy doing? He's writing, this idiot's writing a book about the 14. And he just looked at me and he said, I'm the one that sent out the rescue. I was running the station when this happened. And he just decided to save me. He said, come with me. And he took me in the back. And that was when my Border Patrol training started.
Yes.
I sat in the computer center. He had a partner, Jerome Wofford, who had come from San Diego district. And, he was doing the computers. And so I thought, I better just do what Truman Capote used to do. I had read Truman Capote say, I never took notes or took a tape recorder. I just talked and listened. And then I would excuse myself and go in the bathroom and write as fast as I possibly could, everything that was fresh.
Sure.
That's what I did.
Wow.
And Jerome Wofford turned to me and said, second day, Yuma 14. I said, yes, sir. And he said, come over here. And then he called up the death scene footage of each guy.
Wow.
And he analyzed it with me. And Kenny was watching and listening. And he said, well, how are you going to write this if you haven't been out on the Devil's Highway itself? And I said, well, the Devil's Highway, the part where they were, is closed. It's on the federal bombing range. I can't get on there. I don't have permission. He said, you be here tomorrow at 7.
Yes, sir.
And he took yes, that's what I said. And, I was really freaked out about it. I thought, I'm going to be in a Border Patrol vehicle with this guy.
Right.
I didn't know who, you can't tell what the person is like. And he's a wonderful man. And we loved each other, which was very weird to me. My alarm systems were going off. You can't love a Border Patrol agent. And he was probably thinking the same thing. I can't love this guy, but we did love each other. It was so unexpected, and it changed everything about what I would have done as a writer. It made the book a much better book.
Yes. I can only imagine a sliver of that responsibility that you felt, having to tell those stories, and the families, and the father and the son, you said are clearly some of the most emotional and gut-wrenching to read about. And so I would guess that's why you did so well, first of all, you're just a dang good writer, so you're going to do the research anyway. But I can imagine that you felt like I need to over research. I need to do so much research to get this right.
Yeah, it was so daunting, you know, and I was in a really weird quandary because
Mm-hmm.
the coyote himself was in prison facing big, you know, he was being held facing this hideous lifetime. And there was a lawsuit, a federal investigation and lawsuit going on. So I was denied access to any of the survivors. So I thought, well, how am I going to do this thing? But everybody involved in the experience was so transformed and broken by it that they did things. And I have to be circumspect here. One person had the interrogation tapes of every single survivor as they were brought off the helicopters into the videos, hours of video testimony. But what was interesting, behind these American interviewers came Mexican agents.
Mm.
So if you really paid attention, there was a double interview going on every tape.
Sure.
And this person turned the tapes all over to us. I still have them. Nobody ever saw them but us. So that was incredible. The agents who dealt with them told me stories. I could write to Mendez in prison through his lawyer.
Mm.
You know, so there are all these sideways ways to do it. And it just turned out to be astounding,
Yes.
you know, and part of the amazement to me was hearing the raw, unfiltered responses that they had as they were being put in their beds and just
Sure.
talking. Gave me understanding of things that I would not have had. For example, the kind of confusion around, none of them knew how much money there was. None of them knew how many people there were. One of them said there were 70 of us. One of them said there were 30 of us. There's a group that turned around and left and was never seen again. No trace of them. They may be bones in the desert for all I know. So there was so many people, you know, telling stories that my job was to try to make sure that they were straight. And I didn't think there was any particular truth I could overlay. I just had these truths coming at me. And the best I could do was to try to interpret them and honor everybody that was in them, but leave certain questions open. The thing I did not like was that the publisher made me put data at the end. You got to put numbers in there. And I said, the numbers are not going to matter in 6 months, much less years from now. You know, and I left all my stories out except in the 10-year anniversary edition. I put some personal stuff in there about, you know, having a car crash with Mexican narcos and stuff. That was kind of Charles Bowden, you know, manly adventure. So I put it back.
How about that conversation that you overheard at the airport between a couple, I think it was in Texas, a couple of narcos, you said?
Yeah, that was
just like,
oh my God, man. Laredo. Yeah.
You're kind of just, está bien, está bien.
Dude, you know, that was right around the Barbie stuff when El Barbie was caught.
Yeah.
And I knew because, you know, the airport's not in Laredo and they pick you up in a limo and the driver's driving and he looks at me in the mirror and he says, they know you're here.
Oh,
I said, who knows I'm here? And he said,
cryptic.
they know you're here. Watchale.
Oh my God. I don't know if you've read Alfredo Corchado.
I have not.
He's a writer out of Dallas, and he's similar story, just this idea of the they. I think it's, you know, yeah. We'll leave that alone there.
Someone knows you're here.
Yes.
Yeah, those guys in the airport were set that.
Oh no.
And I was the only white boy sitting in the lounge, and they came in and they sat next to me and started talking, and I was like, oh. And they were talking about the guy they'd failed to kill. and they were going to have to go tell the boss about it. I thought, what? What? And I looked over at them, and they were both leaning over like this, looking at me. And I thought, I'm going to go find Starbucks or something and get away from these guys.
Woof.
But, as with everything, because I have that odd eye, I think, what touched me, it was an older guy and a younger guy. And the younger guy was a big, burly, what you think a seta might look like, with the shades. And he had the Santa Muerte tattoo on his arm. As they were getting in line, the old guy says, don't let me forget, you got to stop at the store and get C batteries.
The banal, right?
Yeah, I was like, what?
C batteries, not AA.
Even these guys are guys. On some level, people are people, and there must be some way to reach that, I hope.
Wow. I know you're a music fan. Sometimes they'll release those on the days of CDs, or the greatest hits album.
Yeah, right.
And I always kind of be like, well, I already have the albums that have those songs, So I feel like sometimes maybe, way better than I do. Like the publisher will say, put this prologue in, put this 15 years on, so I feel like a lot of times it's forced. Yours was awesome. And I mean that honestly, because of the fact that, like you said, you wrote Devil's Highway, which is over my right shoulder here.
Yeah.
Next to the Kite Runner. You wrote that in a very objective way. And then I was really happy to read the 10 years after, because you got more perspective, right? And unfortunately, it was about 7 or 8 years into the drug war, so you were adding some things about that. But I really thought that accomplished a lot. When sometimes I feel like it's just extra, and maybe the publisher said you had to do it, but were you able to tell a little bit of your own more subjective? And I thought that really worked really well.
I'm glad.
Yeah, no doubt.
I didn't know if I should, but then I thought, but it's okay. It's been out there for 10 years. Nobody expected it to be a big hit, and it's had this huge life. And that's really, that's really gratifying in so many ways to me. But yeah, I thought, well, I can tell that story as well now.
A couple other observations about the craft. Some of the great writing is that second person when you're describing what it is to be the Border Patrol. So good. You're going to do this. You do this. Right. It's like I don't know if you ever read Jonathan Gold, the food writer, and much more.
Yeah.
He puts you in that restaurant. I thought that was incredible. You're like another Lori Moore / who else is good in second person?
Second person is a wonderful tool. I'm good pals with Stuart Onan, the novelist. My wife says that we're like idiot savants because we found each other and just would blast ridiculous emails to each other day and night, writing in faux Cormac McCarthy or quoting Robert Plant shrieks, whatever. But he has that amazing book, and it's called To Bury the Dead, where the entire book is told in second person.
Oh wow, okay.
And it's a book of mounting impossible tension and entrapment and horror. And he was straight up with me. He said, I'm forcing the reader to take part in that. And I've always liked that. And it seemed that in the places in the Devil's Highway, specifically in what is weirdly the most popular scene, if that's the word in the book, is when the people die of heat stroke, basically.
Yes.
And I got to tell you that I didn't know anything about that. The Border Patrol taught me. But I thought, if I'm going to write this and make it really impactful, let me force it on the reader. Let me force the reader, to be in their shoes, literally. And in other places, where I knew people were sort of reluctant with the Border Patrol,
right?
Especially my readers. But it works. It works. And when it came time to write that, my supervisory agent Kenny said, "You don't know what it's like to die of this heat, do you?" And I said, "Well, get thirsty and die." He said, "No, man. No, I'm gonna get you a call from one of the lifesavers." And the guy called me, and he said, whatever his name was, it's in the book, but he said, I'm the urine expert." I said, "Wait a minute, Border Patrol's got a urine expert?" He said, "Oh yeah. he said, I'm going to tell you about the stages of this kind of a death and the function of urine. And the first thing he said to me was, and it's in the book, if you drink your own urine the first time through, that's the Evian of urine.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And it was amazing because we think of the cartoon of the guy crawling through the desert that you'd see in the New Yorker or Playboy or something, that trope.
Mm-hmm.
But to realize how hard that death really is.
Yes.
So I wanted to force it on the reader.
Yeah.
And I had hoped, I trusted that by that point in the book, I had gained enough trust from the reader to put them through that experience.
Oh yeah, it was clearly visceral. And yeah, I mean, it was not gratuitous. It was empathy, I guess, as far as we could be empathetic, not having gone through that. It was brilliantly done. And the book was a nominee for the Pulitzer, what do you call that? The Pulitzer Prize.
Finalist.
So yes. So you obviously did very, very well with that book. Congratulations. That was an incredible accomplishment.
Thank you.
I'd love to talk about The House of Broken Angels.
Okay.
More recently, a couple of years ago, 2018 was published, I believe.
Yeah, we sold it to Hulu, so
okay,
it's going to be a TV show. So I always tell students, if you haven't read it, just wait, you can watch it.
Oh, that will be an incredible.
I hope. You never know.
Like a mini series, or
yeah.
Oh man, I can't wait. You've called it the Mexican Finnegan's Wake.
Kinda.
Is that fair assessment?
Okay. Let me have a drink of water here.
Yeah, please.
I should say it's tequila or something.
Yeah.
The experience was definitely the Mexican Finnegan's Wake.
Mm-hmm.
So my brother Juan, I told you about earlier, who brought me science fiction and paperbacks and so forth. He especially after my father's death, Juan became the patriarch of the family. And we were always close, though he was in many ways a very reticent man. He never said the word love. He didn't. Yeah, he had some rough times in his life and so forth. Anyway, so I was here in Illinois, and Millie, the niece, the little mousy, she and I are pretty close. And I was walking along the river near our house here with my daughter, and the cell phone rang, and it was Millie, and she said, "Hi, Theo, my dad wants to talk to you." I said, "Oh." And I don't know if you're like me, but if you get the unexpected family call, it's not, oh boy, you think, uh-oh. Oh, yeah. And I did. I thought, oh no, what's wrong? And he got on the phone and he said, "Hi, carnal, how are you?" And I said, "I'm good. How are you?" And he said, "I'm dying." I said, "What?" "I have cancer and I'm really sick." So this began this amazing sort of almost fictional thing, in that, you talk about Operation Uplift. It's a lot of folks on Facebook and so forth. And I didn't know what to do. And I said to him on the phone, I said, "Listen, do you do Facebook?" And he said, "No." And I said, "Okay, like, here's what Facebook is." Okay. And I said, "So people often put a prayer request if they have a sick relative." "Yeah." And I said, "Yeah, strangers pray for them. You want me to do that for you?" "Yes, I'd like that." I said, "Okay, I'm going to do it." So I put it up. I said, "My brother's sick. He's got cancer. Could you please pray for him?" And people started to respond. So you had about 150 people, right? And I told him, and he was so happy, and then went into remission.
Wow.
So being the Mexican family, it was a little bit of, wow, Uncle Luis pulled some, and everybody was still vibing off Hummingbird's daughter anyway. So it was very cosmic. Got sick again. We were on the road. We went to the hospital. He was very, very ill. I had to go to an event. And we thought he was going to die right there. And he was having visions and It was awful. And he put it up on Facebook again, and now they had named themselves Team Juan, and we got hundreds of people, and he went into remission, and he got sick once again, and did Team Juan again. He ended up with 350 people. But what was cool about the last one was I was talking to him on the phone and reporting, and I said, "You got everybody, man. There's Christians praying for you, Catholic, Protestant. There's Jewish people praying for you. There's Baha'i people praying for you. There's Muslim people praying for you." And I said, "I got a message from some Wiccans." And he said, "Qué son Wiccans?" I said, "Witches." "What?" I said, "Yeah, witches. They went out and did a ceremony for you, sky clad under the moon." He said, ¿Qué es eso? And I said, "Brother, they were naked." And he says to me, "Naked witches are praying for me?"
Oh man.
He was so happy.
Yeah.
And he had tumors in his lungs, and they disappeared. It was like this series of weird miracles. In fact, his doctor told him there's a technical name for this, and it's miracle.
Wow.
So after he'd been through all of this, his birthday was coming. And the granddaughters knew he was not going to survive. So they wanted to give him a last birthday party on Earth. Okay. His mom, not my mom, because my half brother, his mom, 100 years old, dies the weekend before his party. And because he's the patriarch, he's in charge of it all. And it pisses him off because he's like, "Did you have to die now? Everything's impossible." So, we went out to her funeral, which was a Saturday, and the next day was his party. And all hell broke loose in so many ways. I couldn't keep track of it all. But that was the Mexican Finnegan's Wake, including the scene. And by the way, I should send you the link to this so your listeners can hear this. But the scene where the young heavy metal singer at the funeral for the grandma, the satanic Hispanic,
right?
That's actually my nephew. My nephew Carlos. He's got a Norwegian death metal Chicano band. And he really did unleash, the devil voice in the middle of the funeral. And I knew I was gonna, if I wrote a novel, that would be in it. But all that stuff happened. It was craziness. And then I extrapolated from that and tried to tell this family epic, because I thought it's the story of every family. If I can write this story about us, our family, especially when we were coming under fire, build the wall stuff, seen on the way to grandma's funeral, people holding signs up to us.
Wow.
Build a wall, go back where you came from. They were just going to bury their matriarch. They'd been in the United States 70 years already. They were like, what? So that was all that just seemed like, and I didn't really know that it was going to be that novel, honestly. Yeah, I didn't have any idea I was going to write about it, but people I love kept urging me to write about it, and it ended up turning into a book.
There are some incredible lines. Obviously, it's about as serious of a topic as there can be, but there's also, so much humor.
Because we're funny, man.
Yeah.
Families are funny. Everybody's funny.
Just things like you were talking about. I think two of the brothers. I don't think it was Big and Little. I think it was maybe Big and Pato, maybe. But it's something about when they were in their cups, which says so much. When they were in their cups, when they're having a couple drinks. Enough said. The rest kind of makes sense, right? You're talking about like some of the ironic hipsters and the college level, and you talk about the Norwegian, not a death metal band, but a Norwegian death metal band. I love the line. I think you used it twice. The sisters-in-law who had big time beef, they were elaborately ignoring each other. Ignoring each other. Those words, it's like an oxymoron, no?
But it's a ritual. When you're ignoring somebody. It's quite a performance. So you're very much It's very ritualistic, you
Yes.
know, the way you're not looking at that person.
And gracias a Dios for that family tree at the end. Thank you so much for that.
Well, you know, here's something funny about that family tree. So there wasn't a family tree in the hardcover, and
Mhm.
people couldn't keep track of it. But, you know, partially I thought, yeah, that's good, you know, struggle with it, because we
Mhm.
were struggling with it. I didn't know who the hell everybody was.
Sure.
But I also thought, you think it's okay for all of that family to be confused by the babble in English constantly.
Hmm.
See how you like it. Try it on.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Um, and then enough people requested it.
Mhm.
And I said to my editor, you know what's really funny though? I said, Little Angel is keeping notebooks. What if we make, I'll do the notebook and you just reprint it as though it's the pages from his book.
Mhm.
And they said, that's great, family. And then they put it in the back of the book, which I thought, that's a really weird tactical move because people
Mm.
still didn't have it. They would
Sure.
find it,
Sure. Eventually. Yeah.
right? But they were still having to suffer.
So many good scenes. I was the gringo who read. I read one of the lecturas at a quinceañera, at a family quinceañera a couple years back, right? And the same type of priest. This was a priest, I believe, at the funeral, who was not there to celebrate the life of the matriarch, but instead, the fire and brimstone. I had the same
Yeah.
exact thing, where this guy, this girl, she's 15 years old, she's a sweetheart, she's having a quinceañera, and this priest is talking about stay out of gangs, the world is evil, and it's just like, whoa, right? So there, so many scenes like that that will make great television for dang sure.
I hope so. It's
Oh
it's
man.
such a barrio experience, you know.
Mm.
All of my of sort of Juan's, offspring and so forth that have had hard times. Everybody's together in the same cemetery.
Mhm.
And there have been some funerals, not just of priests, but with evangelical preachers, the same kind of things,
Mhm.
just it's like a last minute thing to make the homies
Right.
straighten out.
Oh, jeez. So you use the term carnal, which,
See,
as far as I know, I don't know that it could be anything more close. I mean, carnal, like blood of my blood, flesh of.
flesh of my
Um,
flesh.
the book is so carnal. The scenes. I mean, my gosh, there's so much sex. There's so much assumed sex, right?
There's some naughty.
Oh
It's
my
not.
God.
There's naughtiness in it.
There's so much food. Pato's got his third and fourth servings. There's
Mm.
just so much, so much, so much, which makes the book great. Like you said, family members. Who's this guy? Who's the nephew? I met him once. All those kind of things. Where did the carnality come from? Was that pretty easy to do because of the real life situation, or do you
Yeah.
feel like exaggerated a bit for effect, or
Hmm.
maybe you didn't even need to?
I do think because it's a fable, things are heightened a bit in it.
Sure.
But I think that's a mainstay of everything I write. I
Mm-hmm.
suspect.
Sure.
Critics, when Hummingbird's Daughter came out, they were saying I write food porn.
Hmm.
But it's a question of the physicality. How do I put this? The physicality of our being here. It's weirdly spiritual to me.
Okay.
It's like it's spirit writing in its own weird way. Um, you know, some people definitely see it perhaps as sinfulness, but when I did the sequel to Hummingbird's Daughter, the Queen of America, we actually put recipes in the back. I thought you're going to say I have food
Mm.
porn. I'll tell you how to cook it.
Right.
I'll
Right.
tell you how to make a drink,
Right.
which was really fun. So it's a form, I think, of humanization. We have these false separations between us,
Sure.
i.e. the fences. Go to any gathering and you'll see fences. They're invisible, but they're there.
Mm.
So to me, those things, uh, it's like a hyperdrive. It's like Mad Max turning on the
Mhm.
nitrous oxide in his interceptor, and he can suddenly go 200 miles an hour. You find a way to break through the barriers, and people are eating, people are living, people are making love or lusting or crying or laughing. All of it is this inescapable tidal pull of our being human. And that book had more sexuality in it than other books I've written. You know, and there's just a little bit in the new one I'm writing now as well. But I didn't want it to be extraneous
Sure.
or, you know, or porny, but I wanted it to be frank. And and this may make sense to you compositionally, if you're writing a book about the waning moments of the body, because at the very depths of that book, it's about a body
Sure.
breaking down and the man trapped inside that body. And so the metaphors are very physical. There's not a whole lot of, you know, consulting gurus and so forth. I mean, here he's talking to the secret Jesuit who calls him a bitch and keeps stealing coffee. You know, it's there. And this is something that started happening during Hummingbird's Daughter, when I realized that the earlier versions of that book, it took 25 years to write that book. And when I realized that one of my failures was that I was trying to be ethereal, you know, Bernadette or somebody. And the reality is that, you know, even Jesus lived in funk. Grace comes to you in the stink, in the mud. You know, there aren't that many mountain peaks. There's very little territory. The majority of it is down here.
Sure.
And so it was very important to me to have that sense of you know, the sacredness, I think, of even sin in a way. You know, that our desire to be alive is so huge. That's why one of the first things you see is Lalo's bedroom, where he's a struggling alcoholic, and he's got, you know, the short version of the Serenity Prayer on his garage wall.
That's right. What was that prayer again? It was like,
God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
But I'm sorry, I thought I think there was something really pithy that was great, that when you talk
about
it's an
obscenity version. The short version is fuck it.
Yes. I thought it was something like that. Yeah.
I have a lot of friends in 12-step programs, so it's an old 12-step joke. But I thought Lalo is not a guy who could deal with that prayer, but he could sure deal with fuck it.
He could.
You know?
He could. Yeah, I mean, Big Angel obviously is a flawed character, but a very sympathetic character. The patriarch, the great scene where he's getting the kiss on the hand like he's Don Corleone, right?
Can I tell you a little thing about that?
Please.
You'll like this probably. And by the way, the stuff that Big Angel has done in his life is not anything to do with my brother. There were no murders. We're not from La Paz. None of that stuff. That's the fiction. But what to me was one of the pivot points of my whole experience of all this was that gathering in the backyard. And he really was sitting in the middle of it in a wheelchair. And I sat with him and watched these people come and pay their respects to him and so forth. And it was, you know, a very low budget opening of The Godfather. And I said to him, you're just like Don Corleone. And like the book, he said, I am Don Corleone.
Yes.
And I thought, oh my God. And there was this resonance for me, because on my first trip to deep Mexico with my dad, on a bus, 27-hour bus trip, he handed me The Godfather paperback. He said, read this. And I said, why? And he said, just read it. It'll change your mind. And when I was blown away, I was awake the whole bus trip reading this thing. I was just a kid. And when we discussed it, he said, this book is about us. And I said, gangsters? And he said, no, people who have come to the United States and are trying to do the American dream and have success and have a family.
Right.
And they honor their own traditions. That's us. I've never forgotten that. So
Wow.
that weird little line between the Godfather and my brother,
Mm-hmm.
you know, went through my dad.
Well, you remember the first line of the movie is "I believe in America."
Yeah, that's
Right.
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 That's right.
Right.
And you know, Big Angel, he did.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I mean, one of the pivotal scenes, and I guess there are multiple, but is Big Angel and Little Angel in bed together. Big Angel saying, you know, he's resting, he's sick, he's having, you know, he's saying, "Come stay with me," and it was absolutely beautiful in many ways. It was infuriating in some ways because they were going back and forth with the insults at times. Um, I guess that was based on real life.
I can send you the picture,
Yeah, yeah.
but it wasn't like the book necessarily. But you know, we didn't have any kind of argument, for example. It's nothing
Mm-hmm.
like that. But
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, he was very weak, and so they had to take him back to bed, and so he disappeared, and someone came out and said, Juan wants you. And I was like, really? Yeah. And I hadn't been back to his bedroom or anything, you know, and I think this is going to be really
Yeah,
weird, man.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I went back there and I looked in and he was in the bed. And he said, Carnal, in. And I went in there and he patted the bed and he said, get in bed. I said, what? I mean, I had never even hugged him before. But he didn't have time to waste now. Get in bed. Like this, he patted the bed.
Mm-hmm.
And I got in bed with him. And then we had this amazing talk about family and love. And he made me kiss him on the forehead.
Mm-hmm.
It's the only kiss I ever. So, you know, and at the end of the party, I was going back on the road. I used to live on the road before COVID.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, I used to daydream I could be, you know, Jim Morrison, and then I got my writing nerd version of it being on the road all the time. But I was on my way to Flagstaff and then Dallas, and my family were flying back home to Chicago. And I went in his bedroom, and he said, "Don't say goodbye to me."
Yeah.
Just like the book. And I said, "Okay, what do I say?" And he said, "Say I'll see you next time." I said, "Okay." And then he put his hand out and took my hand and wouldn't let me go. And he pulled me down and he said, "Afterwards, when you see hummingbirds, that's me."
Yeah.
And then I went on the road and he died.
Yeah.
I came back and helped bury him.
Yeah. Beautiful. I appreciate you sharing obviously such a personal story. Um, beautiful scenes. They really are.
Thanks.
You know, the kiss on the forehead, like you talk about, just incredible. There's not going to spoil it, but there's a very action packed scene at the penultimate scene, maybe you'd say, right? Very action packed. There's the coda, in which actually the ending is equally beautiful, but it is pretty calm and tranquil, as opposed to the whole book, which is just hubbub, this, that, all over the place, right? And
Right.
it ends on such a beautiful note. Like I said, a tranquil note, but I guess maybe kind of in contrast to the rest of the book is part of what makes it beautiful too. Yeah.
Well, there's a couple of things about that coda.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted some way that wasn't religious or new agey or starry-eyed,
Sure.
strictly through the composition, to imply subliminally afterlife.
Mm-hmm.
He's dead, he's buried. Oh, wait a minute, he's on the phone. You know, there's a kind of a subliminal play there with the afterlife, but also going back to our Italian roots. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. I've always been in love with Respighi, the composer.
Okay.
And this book, I realized, was set to the soundtrack of The Fountains of Rome.
Ah.
All the wild, exuberant, dramatic, sometimes frightening, you know, that incredible symphonic poem set to each one of the fountains of Rome.
I see.
And if you're really keyed into the music, you can see me feeling and thinking the energies of that music in the scenes through the book. But the way that piece ends, is after all that drama and excitement and sorrow and all those feelings, the orchestra starts hitting all of the orchestra together, these chords that descend
Mm-hmm.
towards silence. And as they do, there's a single church bell tolling. And the effect of that to me is overwhelming. And I had a suspicion that that would work for me as a writer, but we went to see, because I'd never heard his music live at
Ah.
the Chicago Symphony, and they played the Fountains of Rome, and I was just on the floor, man, because it was what I wanted to. What was that?
That
Did
was
I just freeze again?
No, we're good. That wasn't me, I don't think.
Did you hear that noise?
Yeah, I did.
That's what happened last time it froze. Anyway,
Okay.
that was what I wanted to accomplish compositionally, that I sort of had in my mind, but once I heard it live, I knew, yeah, you know. So that's what the coda was all about.
Oh, beautifully done. Beautifully done.
Thank you.
There's the last scene of The Godfather Part 3 where Michael Al Pacino dies, and there's, in my humble opinion, quite possibly the most beautiful piece of music ever created is Pietro Mascagni is the Intermezzo.
Oh yeah.
It's also
Yeah.
is also in the De Niro Pesci The Raging Bull.
Yes. Yes.
Right. And so, there was all the hubbub, and then there was that scene where he quietly, passes away. And but yes, que descanse Juan y que descanse Angel. It was, condolences, of course, for your brother. Beautifully and sad and all of the above. What are you working on these days, if you would share?
Well,
you don't have to.
No, I'll tell you. I'm under contract and under high deadline pressure to complete a World War II epic inspired by my mother's service in the Red Cross.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm privy to a lot of information most people just apparently don't have or aren't aware of.
Sure.
So it's been quite a challenge, and especially difficult because you have to not write your mom's story. And I have found as a writer that's very difficult, because these women that the book is about have some really real world experiences, and you cannot, I don't care who you are, write a book in which your mom is having a lover or whatever. So I psychologically was able to write about women who knew my actual mom, and they see her elsewhere, just so I could have the that I could base the adventures on things I know viscerally from my own mom and her companions' experiences, but I can fictionalize them so I can write it. And mom shows up once in a while, which is kind of nice for me, because to see her,
Yes. Well, definitely looking forward to that. One of the links that I'll put on the episode is your interview with Terry Gross, and you describe that. I mean, incredibly, the way you describe how she was basically on the front lines, and they called them donut
dollies. Yeah,
they didn't like, and obviously,
they didn't like that. But yeah,
your father had such an incredible life. You talk about him being number 2 on the license plates in Mexico.
Yeah.
And, in your mom's story, just incredible. I just wanted to end by thanking you again. And we were talking a little bit about 2019 Santa Cruz. You were, I think at I was gonna say a Barnes and Noble, but more like a community bookstore. And
it was a community bookstore.
I was able to hear you speak there about the House of Broken Angels. And it was incredible because you were talking to everybody, and there were some people that you would consider to be classic Santa Cruz, kind of hippie,
They were great.
Right? There were some, who clearly, dressed the part, and, were going to probably a tea and crumpets afterwards, right?
Came over from the yacht club.
Exactly, right? And but I'll never forget is that there was a guy there who grew up in Tijuana, and he got up and the question and answer session, and he was so happy to see you there, and you guys were able to talk. I saw it in one of your writings recently, Cartolandia, algo así.
Yeah, Cartolandia.
right? And he talked about that, and you could see his pride in growing up in Tijuana, yours as well. But it was so cool that it was just, for there, it was just like, it was just you two guys, just like back in the old days, you know? And I thought that was so cool. I got in line, got a signature and a picture with you. And he definitely was there as well. And that was just so cool. You're able to speak to a broad audience and everyone loved you, and you're able to speak. He felt like you were talking, directly to him. So that was pretty dang cool.
That makes me happy, man.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. I'm overwhelmed with praise and gratitude. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This was fun.
What was that? 10 minutes, 20 minutes, maybe a little longer than that, but
yeah, it was like 15 minutes, wasn't it?
you got that darn deadline. I don't want to keep any longer. Absolute pleasure. You're an incredible writer. We didn't even get to talk much about Hummingbird's Daughter and all of your other great work, but keep up the great work. Thanks for being such a mentor and inspiration to Ruben, to me, and to so many others. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, brother.
Oh, man. Thank you so much for listening to episode 43 with Luis Alberto Urrea. You can now subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts. Please leave me a 5-star review. You can also ask for the podcast by name using Alexa and find the pod on Spotify and on Amazon Music. Follow me on Instagram, where I'm at Chills at Will Podcast, or on Twitter, where I'm at Chills at Will PO1. This is a passion project of mine, a DIY operation, and I'd love for your help in promoting what I'm convinced is a unique and spirited look at an often ignored art form. The intro song for the Chills at Will podcast is Wind Down instrumental version, and the other song played on the episode was Hoops instrumental by Matt Weidauer. Both songs are used through archesaudio.com. For now, thanks again for listening, and I hope that these quarantine days bring you texts by writers with mad skills like Luis Alberto Urrea and his masterpieces, The Devil's Highway and The House of Broken Angels, among others. Those writers whose work gives you chills at will.